One thing that has not been getting the attention today, I think it's been kind of subsumed by oil, which we can come back to, but it is this forced migration issue, right? So if we can cut off the cartels in Venezuela and create jobs in Venezuela, it creates a much more conducive environment for Venezuelans to stay in Venezuela. That's been part of Trump's agenda. And then if you think about a lot of the criminal activity that has been committed in the U.S. by people affiliated with the gangs, right? If you cut off the head of the snake, does the snake itself wither here? So I think that's a big part of it. And I think we're also setting a precedent for going after cartels in Mexico, where maybe it's not till the end of Q1, Q2, we can talk to Scheinbaum and say, hey, it's time to deal with the Mexican cartels properly. We'll help you or we'll do it ourselves. So I think that's a instrumental part of the overall policy of kind of this domestic freedom is getting rid of the cartels, taking away that power base. Then there is the energy aspect. Then I think there is the signaling it sends to everywhere else. And for me, the most interesting part is you now finally have an economic friction with China outside of mainland China versus mainland U.S., right? We have interest in Venezuela. China has interest in Venezuela. This is going to come to the courts, and we're going to see how it plays out.
So one of the things, again, I think we learned is when you break something, you own it. And arguably that was the case in Iraq. Some concern that may be the case here in Venezuela. How did your leaders at your firm think about that?
I think we would disagree with that. I think we kind of really saw with Iran that we are now taking, if we break it and you fix it, we'll just break it again. And we don't take that ownership. I think that was Colin Powell really felt that if we break it, we should fix it. I think we broke it for a reason. If you fix it, we will break it again for a reason. And Trump, even during Trump 1.0, he distinguishes very carefully between military strikes and operations versus war. So in his mind, certainly there is a big difference between doing a strike like we did on the Iranian nuclear facilities or this operation carried out and going to war. And I think that's an important thing. And then finally, I think when we all look at deterrence is only really effective if people are scared you will use your capabilities. For too long, we didn't use our capabilities. So I think as a whole, we see these as generally positive and reestablishing. Though like everything else, there's questions about how it was done, why it was done, and the way it was done. But that's kind of our baseline.
As Paul was saying earlier, markets seem to be shrugging off a lot of this, right? You have equities higher, you have a move to havens like the dollar and gold and treasuries, but it's not an overwhelming response. Why do you think that is? Why is everyone kind of taking this in stride right now?
One, I think it was a little bit telegraphed. Obviously, this final operation caught people a little bit by surprise, but we've all had time to digest, right? The Venezuelan oil story is interesting, but the unproven reserves are just that, unproven. They're potentially expensive to get at. We are going to have this friction where Trump says we want to take all this, that we're owed a lot, and we are legally owned some of our companies are owned money, but China has clearly made a lot of initiatives there. So I think on the oil story, it's okay. Rare earths and critical minerals come up, but again, that's kind of okay. I think what we're trying to do with the cartels, they're all little bits and pieces. So I think the market is taking in stride as it should. I think this, though, the big concern to me is going to be if China reacts and starts threatening on rare earths and critical minerals as part of their response and how they want to get leverage, that I think would be detrimental to markets. We're not pricing that in right now, but even as the trade's gone on today, you're starting to see some of the small and mid caps rise, and the AI story is kind of fading a little bit. So I think that's going to be the key. Is this is really good for production, for security. Companies that are going to be very involved in building up America's resilience are going to do well. The AI story, I think, is a little bit played out.
And just looking at the VIX here, we're back below 15 here. So it's suggesting that the volatility in the equity markets is abating here. And not that it ever really even spiked right. on this news. It's been very quiescent. What are the executives at your firm thinking about as it relates to maybe President Trump certainly viewing this as a success so far? Does that mean may replicate it in places like Cuba, Colombia, Greenland? I mean, he's mentioned a lot of different scenarios over the past 48 hours.
When we've talked a little bit about this going forward, and we kind of collected this weekend, I think Cuba might be most at risk given the size of it, their dependence on Venezuela. And we've got the USS Ford there, which is the aircraft carrier. One, the Caribbean Sea is not an ideal place for an aircraft carrier group to operate in, right? They tend to need much bigger space, much more open waters. So it's already not an ideal place for them to be. That ship is actually due to be docked at some point this year. It needs repairs and things like that. It needs to be an overhaul. So I think there's a use it or lose it sense. So that's why I would put kind of Cuba as potentially the next to feel pressure, maybe Colombia. We've talked a bit about Iran. I think Iran, it's difficult, it's far away, and there's a big religious element that I don't think we want to get involved with in Iran. Maybe we do something with IRGC people there, but I think that's going to be a bit more hands-off. And Greenland, that one, I think that probably causes the most consternation.
Okay, and that's something that we've been grappling with for a while
Right,
now
right.
because President Trump has talked about that quite a bit, much to the Danes' consternation.
And can I add one thing on that
Yes,
too?
please.
I think I'm willing to believe that in Venezuela, there's rare earths and critical minerals sitting around that have not been properly, looked at, right? Have we taken the advantages? When I look at Greenland, I think enough people have checked out those rare earths and critical minerals. If they could be mined or extracted economically, someone would already be doing that. So I think there's maybe a slightly bigger opportunity with Venezuela because of the underinvestment in that country. I'm really dubious that we can get a whole lot out of Greenland that we couldn't get easier ways or with being less provocative.